Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your Master of Ceremonies for this evening, Soraya Sarif.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum, ahlan wa sahlan, and welcome. It is my utmost honor and privilege to welcome you to this special production of the Aga Khan Development Network, AKDN, Touching Lives. In the next hour, we will take a journey and explore a number of key questions, such as, what does the AKDN do? We will see how individual lives, communities, and countries have been impacted by its work, and how it touches the lives of millions of people around the world. Hazar Imam has often described his role as Imam and explained why he established the AKDN.
The role of the Ismaili Imam is a spiritual one. His authority is that of religious interpretation. It is not a political role. I do not govern any land. At the same time, Islam believes fundamentally that the spiritual and material worlds are inextricably connected. Faith does not remove Muslims or their imams from daily practical matters in family life, in business, in community affairs. Faith, rather, is a force that should deepen our concern for our worldly habitat, for embracing its challenges, and for improving the quality of human life. The Muslim belief on this fusion of faith and world is why much of my attention has been committed to the work of the Aga Khan Development Network. Our work has always been people-driven. It grows out of the age-old Islamic ethic, committed to goals with universal relevance: the elimination of poverty, access to education, and social peace in a pluralist environment.
What better way to begin this evening than with the words of Hazar Imam, the chairman of the Aga Khan Development Network himself, explaining the raison d'être for establishing the AKDN. This explanation is at the very heart, the very core of understanding how AKDN is touching lives every single day. My role this evening is to tell you stories. Join me in exploring the AKDN through a series of live interviews and short video clips of the beneficiaries who have had life-transforming experiences because of the AKDN. Of the thousands of lives that the AKDN has touched, we'll take a look at 3 examples: Roshni from India, Zarina from Tajikistan, and Fatiha from Egypt. These lives, like thousands of other lives, are inextricably connected through the magnanimous work of the AKDN. A question some may have is, how is the AKDN structured?
AKDN, as we call it, is composed of a variety of private, non-governmental, non-denominational agencies, implementing many of the Imamate's responsibilities. We are active in the fields of economic development, job creation, education, healthcare, as well as important cultural initiatives.
The AKDN anchors on 3 widely encompassing areas: social development, economic development, and culture. Embedded within these 3 areas are the numerous institutions, including schools, hospitals, universities, rural development programs, cultural projects, the Aga Khan Museum, and the list goes on. Let's take a closer look at the theme of education as an example of the work of the AKDN. You may be wondering, why so much emphasis on education?
One of the important values of the Shia Ismaili tradition is the transformative power of the human intellect. That conviction underscores AKDN's strong commitment to education at all levels, wherever we are present. These activities include the Aga Khan University, now 30 years old, our new University of Central Asia, our Aga Khan academies at the primary and secondary levels, and our major commitment to the potential of early childhood development.
The transformative power of the human intellect. Those are very strong words. Let's reflect on that for a second. How does it actually work on the ground? I'm quite excited to introduce you to Roshni. Many of us have heard the proverb, knowledge is power, and this young lady from Bihar, India, exemplifies this perfectly. What makes Roshni's story special is just how far she was willing to go to pursue her life's purpose. In Bihar, the ability for girls to achieve financial independence and to live with dignity is usually hindered by their ability to attend school, either due to domestic responsibilities or early marriage or even sibling care. But Roshni Parveen, at the age of 15, courageously challenged her parents' will for her to withdraw from school by going on a hunger strike.
मेरा रिश्ता लग गया था, इसके वजह से भी पढ़ाई नहीं होने के लिए बोला जा रहा था। और फिर उसके बाद जब सर लोग समझाए, फिर हम बोला कि मेरा बहुत बड़ा सपना पूरा करने के लिए है, इसलिए हमको पढ़ना। तो फिर भी बोले नहीं, चलो सपना पूरा नहीं करना है, जो हो गया सो हो गया, 5वां तक पढ़ ली, बहुत पढ़ ली, अब नहीं तुमको पढ़ना। फिर जब हम 2-3 दिन रोया, फिर खाना नहीं खाया, बहुत सारा बात समझाया, पापा मम्मी को बोला और सबको अपनी रिश्तेदार वालों को पूरा बताया कि उनको देखिए, वो देहात में रहती, फिर भी पढ़ रही हैं अभी, और यही सब बात बोला तो फिर समझा।
Thanks to the girls' education program, Roshni has not only finished her education, but is also trained to be a pre-primary school teacher.
मेरा पढ़ लिख कर सपना है टीचर बनने का और सबको पढ़ाने का। और मुझे ये नहीं कि हम पढ़ाएंगे तो सबसे पैसा मिलेगा, इसके वजह से नहीं, जो आप लोग कर रहे हो वो सही करने का हम लोग को मेरा भी सपना है कि हम भी जाकर सबसे इंटरव्यू लें और सबको पढ़ाएं, ये सब बताएं, वो भी हम भी जो आगे हम भी बढ़ाएं, लड़की लोग को हम भी पढ़ाएं।
Programs like these have helped girls, about over 1,500 of them in the area, and does plan to help over 10,000 more over the next 3 years. While Roshni's parents were against her going to school, Zarina's parents sends her thousands and thousands of miles away to ensure that she received a quality education. Zarina is from Tajikistan, but she's now going to school at the Aga Khan Academy in Mombasa, Kenya.
Wanted to visit, okay, not Kenya, but just Africa in general. And when first this school was introduced to us at home, I saw it as a really big chance, although I was small in year 6, but talking to my grandparents, they really suggested that I should. And after a couple of presentations, I really wanted to give myself a chance to go outside my own country and study abroad.
So what is Zarina learning whilst at the Aga Khan Academy?
Stereotype a lot back at home because of the closed environment I was in. I didn't get to know a lot about the outside world, but when I came here, I became a critical thinker. Every time I wouldn't accept information just the way it is, I'd analyze it and think about and make my own conclusions about it. Now I understand that I think I used to be very close-minded about Muslims as a Muslim because I grew up as an Ismaili. But then coming here, I got to understand that, hey, not everybody has the same values as me, and I have to respect them the way they are, and I have to accept them the way they are. And being exposed to more cultures, it helped me understand the world. And I think I have grown up as a more pluralistic person because for example, just my roommates, I have a Sunni Muslim roommate, a Hindu, and another is Christian. So you can see like 4 different types all living in the same room. And you get to understand more, and you get to learn how to accept different people's views and opinions towards actions and things that are taking place in the world. And it helps you become a pluralist.
And here is what Zarina hopes to do in the future.
Kind of clear that I want to study development and anthropology, and I want to study it abroad, like in Canada or the US, but eventually I'd love to go back home and become an expert in development or something, and I want to work for an NGO, either the UN or AKDN.
Zarina's story is not unique because all of these children seeking education get a life-transforming experience if they work hard. To support our discussion on education as one of the AKDN strands, we are privileged to have among us the heads of 2 AKDN agencies. These 2 individuals, like all of the AKDN agency heads, are working at the grassroots level to pursue AKDN's objectives of improving quality of life. Although they hold senior positions, they leave no stone unturned to look for a means to an end. Wazir Dr. Shams Qasim Lakha has been working for the Imams institutions for 56 years and is currently the diplomatic representative of the AKDN in the Kyrgyz Republic and also the executive chairman of the Board Executive Committee of the University of Central Asia. The University of Central Asia was established by a unique partnership between the Ismaili Imamate and the governments of Kazakhstan, the Kyrgyz Republic, and Tajikistan. I welcome Wazir Dr. Shams Qasim Lakha. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Please. We also have with us Wazir Salim Bhatia. Wazir Salim Bhatia is the director of the Aga Khan Academies. I welcome Wazir Salim Bhatia. Thank you as well for joining us this evening. Thank you both for joining us, gentlemen. Hopefully you've had time to enjoy the games, because as we know, a healthy body is a prerequisite to a healthy mind. Are we correct?
Absolutely.
Excellent. My first question is to Wazir Shams. Many in the audience may be wondering, why set up a university in Central Asia? Could you please provide us with a brief overview of what Hazar Imam hopes to achieve with this particular endeavor?
Well, before I tell you more about the University of Central Asia and its objectives, I think the most important part of your question is, why did Maulana Hazar Imam establish the 2 universities? I remember a long time ago, in 1994, when we were celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Aga Khan University, he spoke to a very large audience, and he said, people have asked me why I established the Aga Khan University. And he said, I established it after much reflection and after concluding some thoughts about what might bring back the glory that was once belonging to the Ummah. He said, I came to the conclusion that no amount of military might, nor any amount of riches will bring back that glory to the Ummah. The only way they could bring it back is through training the human resources of the Ummah, the men and women, in higher education and of course higher education, so that they can take the leadership of the Ummah. And so, coming to the University of Central Asia, a very large part of our Jamaat lives in Central Asia, particularly Tajikistan. And there is also the ethic of the AKDN that when you educate your own or you look after their health or their housing, you are looking after the neighbors as well. You're touching their lives as well, right?
Absolutely.
So we got guidance that if we're going to do a university for the population that is in the mountain areas, and mountains, you will be interested to know, around the world, there is an inverse ratio between the height of the mountain where you live and the level of poverty. The higher you live, the poorer you are. So whether it is in Tajikistan or in Kyrgyzstan or in the Andes, the higher you are, the poorer you are.
Ah, interesting.
So when people live at that height, particularly in Badakhshan, there is a very high level of the residences are at very high mountains, same in northern Pakistan, in Afghanistan. So the idea was that if these people need to be pulled out of poverty and out of being marginalized, we need to give them education, not just at the primary and secondary levels, but at higher education so that they become job creators rather than job seekers.
Wow, that's profound.
And that was the purpose behind the establishment of the University of Central Asia, which is now having campuses being built in Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan. And inshallah, we will move to other parts of the...
Inshallah.
You talk about touching lives. You talk about touching lives. The University of Central Asia, you saw the campus pictures here. But these are the pictures of the latest developments where we are building undergraduate campuses. Inshallah, the first one will open in 2 months' time.
Wow.
And that will be in Kyrgyzstan. And Hazrat Imam's blessings, inshallah, we will also have the possibility of opening the next campus in Tajikistan in 2017 September.
How exciting.
Yes. So the interesting part is that while these campuses are under construction and will impart undergraduate education, the UCA has been educating young people and mid-career professionals since 2006. Already we have educated 89,000 people in mid-careers and in the younger brackets and the older ones in all 3 countries plus Afghanistan, and through our School of Professional and Continuing Education. 89,000 lives have been touched already by the university Hazrat Imam has established.
That is amazing. Wow. So let's talk about the Aga Khan academies as well. So there's a lot of growth going on that side as well. Vizier Salim, my next question to you is, the academies, they draw students from around the world based on their academic standing. Now, some of these students are coming in from countries and communities where they would otherwise have no opportunity to access quality education. Can you tell us a little bit about their experiences and how the academies are transforming them and their communities?
That's a great question for me, because I've had the good fortune to watch many of these lovely young boys and girls as they have developed over the years. And let me share a couple of stories that might be the best way to put the concept and the value across. First student I can tell you about is Max Wynn. Max Wynn's a Kenyan. We found him through the AKF, the Aga Khan Foundation, rural support and other poverty reduction programs. And we identified him through our talent identification process that was brand new. We were just experimenting with it. This was in 2009. He was in 6th grade. His class had close to 100 students in it when we went to see it. His teacher said, you know, this young man's lost. His father's job has been lost. He is living in a very poor condition. We don't think he is going to make it through, and he's certainly not going to go to secondary school. But he was so bright. Well, 3 years later, he was at the Aga Khan Academy in the residential program, so he was living on campus. And 3 years later, he was putting together a library with 500 books for his old school.
Wow.
And now, just last year, he graduated and was accepted at the University of Toronto with a MasterCard, a full MasterCard scholarship. Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And this young man wants to do civil engineering. Why? Because he thinks this would be an effective way by which he could help the people of Kenya. He did a project, there's an extended essay, a capstone kind of essay that they write in the last year at the academy. And he did the research combining chemistry and economics, and he did a project on fertilizer used by farmers and determined through looking at the formulas and what materials were being used, that the farmers were using the wrong composition, and that by changing it slightly, they would make a significant difference to the yields and to their own standard of living.
Brilliant.
Of life.
Brilliant.
So here's one example of a young man. You know, the thing about the Aga Khan Academies is that they are merit-based. They're very focused on merit, and then it does not matter what cultural, ethnic, religious, any socioeconomic background that they come from. So what you find in these schools is, in the academies, is young people that may come from a very well-off family in the same room as a kid of a subsistence farmer or somebody who might be a manual laborer. And you can imagine the experience that these kids go through, both ends of the spectrum and in between. And you have Muslims and Hindus and Christians in the same space, working, living together. You have kids that have come in Hyderabad. We've got kids from Afghanistan as well as from India, of course, and Dubai and the United States that are studying there. It's a very rich, diverse environment. And this is where the children, the students get a chance to transfer conceptual knowledge into an experience, something that they have lived through and have figured out how to navigate through it and to come up with solutions together. Something that I think all of us in the world wish more people could do.
Experience
right?
is the mother of all teachers, absolutely.
Yeah.
So my next question is to actually both of you. If you could offer a piece of advice to our audience here, and particularly the young people in the audience, what would that be?
This is a very distinguished audience. I'm not sure I am qualified to give advice to them. All I can say is if I had to pick one or two thoughts that I would leave with my grandchildren, in nearly 5-6 decades of the service of Imamat and the Jamaat, I have the first thing, not the first thing, but I learned some time ago, not the first time I was involved, that in the many, many meetings that I've had with Hazrat Imam and with the Jamaat leaders and so on, when he speaks, and we of course write down, make notes, but when he speaks, what we understand at the time is one thing. The more we think about it, there is more meaning to what he has to say. And sometimes even for 5 or 10 or 25 years, I have not seen what he actually meant until 25 years went by. Oh my God, is this what Hazrat Imam said? So I can simply say that it is very important to listen to his words, but then to assimilate and to think about that. And the one lesson I have learned out of my little experience of life is that it is extremely important to focus on hard work. Never take it easy. Hard work, but with integrity and ethically. Those are the things that we have learned from the Imam. But the important part is that it's difficult to implement.
Absolutely.
So hard work and integrity and commitment never lets you down.
Yep, absolutely. Determination and persistence. Good.
You know, I was going to give some other advice, but I think I should just build on what Wazir Shams has said. Because I think that when we look at what Hazrat Imam says and does, we often see one facet. And our experience is that the impact is multifaceted.
Yes.
You know, think about the Academy's program as an illustration. You know, 25 years from now, there'll be 18 of these schools in 14 countries. There'll be thousands of students at this, 1,500 teachers. They'll be traveling from one country to another, spending experiential time, collaborating with each other. In 25 years, there will be more than 10,000 alumni from this endeavor. And after that, it'll be 1,000 plus per year that'll be there. Now think about it. You can see the public good, if you like, the bigger good, the greater good of the greater population. But think about what it does for us as a Jamaat, what it does for the Imamat, the institutions, but importantly for us. It allows us to have the best education available in these countries. Talent is not an issue. It allows us to have people who understand us much better, much deeper, who have recognized, you know, even today we have ministers' children studying, top executives in companies who send their children to our school. Their understanding is there. And then if you think about it longer term, there'll be tens of thousands of alumni out there who will at least recognize and be grateful for it, but some actually will know in their hearts that they could not have had the chance that they had, this life-changing experience. Imagine what that does for us.
That is huge. That is huge.
I'd just like to add one further comment, if I may.
Please.
Based on what Wazir Salim has said, but also I was reminded of the clip where Hazrat Imam spoke about the tradition, the Shia tradition of Islam, which respects intellect. You know, we have heard this from him before, but it is worth remembering that there is a very strong connection between intellect and faith. So if you want to understand your faith, you need, in our tariqah, we have to apply our minds. And how do you apply your minds? You can only do so if you train your mind. And you train your mind through good schooling and good university. That's the purpose of the universities.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your wealth of experience with us.
Thank you.
It was indeed a pleasure to have you here. Let's have a round of applause for our esteemed guests. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Now, a question to all of you. How many students are impacted by the AKDN from preschool to university? Any guesses? 2 million. Moving on to another very important facet of AKDN's work, culture. One could ask, why culture? And why would Maulana Hazrat Imam promote it as one of the major endeavors of the AKDN?
Muslims are called upon to improve the physical condition of our world. And honoring our cultural heritage is vital to that calling. Our response in simple terms is that not a day goes by where my institution, the Ismaili Imamat, is not building or rebuilding something somewhere. A historic site, perhaps, but also a hospital, a university, an industry. Our central objective is to improve the quality of life for people in the developing world.
How can culture be used to improve lives in urban, poor, and even remote areas? How can culture be a catalyst for increasing employment, raising household income, affecting well-being, improving health, enhancing urban spaces, reinforcing respect for diversity, and even restoring dignity and hope?
We began to see the added potential of heritage projects for advancing an economic and a social agenda, for fighting poverty and driving development. To be sure, this potential was often ignored, as culture was too easily mislabeled as a luxury amid pressing social and economic needs. But my colleagues and I became convinced that cultural heritage projects are not a diversion from development priorities. Culture is, in and of itself, a development resource of immense potential value. Some who share this view refer to cultural investments as a springboard for development. Similarly, I like to say that cultural heritage can be a trampoline, propelling dramatic improvements in the quality of human life.
Fatiha is a great example of what Hazar Imam just explained. Fatiha lives in the neighborhood of Darb al-Ahmar, which is adjacent to the Al-Azhar Park, for those of you who have been there. Now, before the park was developed, the people of Darb al-Ahmar lived in an impoverished area. The story of the park goes back to 1984, when Hazar Imam announced his decision to create a park for the citizens of Cairo. At that time, the area had been used as a rubbish dump for over 500 years. The challenge was to revitalize this heritage in ways that turned traditional notions about cultural monuments on their head, that rather than being a drain on resources, they could be a stimulus for social and economic development. While developing the park, AKDN worked with the people of Darb al-Ahmar to improve sanitation, to provide healthcare, education, and economic opportunities. And if you've seen some of the handicrafts available in the Global Village's New Dimensions Pavilion, these are made by the people of Darb al-Ahmar, truly talented people. Today, with the support of the AKDN, the Mazala Foundation, which is funded through profits generated from the Al-Azhar Park, is helping people like Fatiha and over 3,000 other families use the space on their roofs to make a living.
احنا زرعنا حاجات كتير، زرعنا نعناع وزرعنا ملوخية وزرعنا بقدونس وزرعنا حاجات كتير استفدنا بيها احنا. هو كان مش نضيف يعني، كنا بنحط فيه حاجات كده يعني، اي حاجة احنا مش عايزينها كنا بنحطها فيه، انما من ساعة لما زرعنا الاسطح وزرعنا الخضرة والحاجات دي بقينا نستفاد منها طبعا، ومبقيناش نحط الحاجات دي.
اهم حاجة هي كذا حاجة، بس أنا أقدر أقول لك إن هو حسن في البيئة عندنا عموما، في المنظر الجمالي، في الصحة، في استفادة الناس، في حاجات كتيرة قوي.
هو مشروع كويس بالنسبة للأسطح بتاعتنا، هو بينظفها وكمان بنستفاد منها.
The Aga Khan Trust for Culture, from Afghanistan to Zanzibar and India to Mali, has built and rehabilitated 19 parks, gardens, and open green spaces, providing pockets of beautiful, serene environments in urbanizing cities of the developing world, showing how culture can be a catalyst for improving quality of life even in the poorest and most remote areas of the globe. Have you ever wondered why Hazar Imam has called this agency the Aga Khan Trust for Culture? The word trust indicates that we have inherited this world in trust, an amana, and have a duty to respect and preserve the environment for our future generations. Culture enables people to better understand themselves as individuals. This sense of identity is core to humanity. Embracing different cultures demonstrates respect, which ultimately leads to pluralistic societies. Pluralism is an essential ingredient for civil society.
The world needs to pay more attention, much, much more attention to the potential role of civil society. An active civil society can open the door for an enormous variety of energies and talents from a broad spectrum of organizations and individuals. It means opening the way for diversity. It means welcoming plurality.
Other leaders, and you'll definitely recognize this next one, also recognize the importance of civil society.
Second, we're creating new innovation centers to empower civil society groups around the world. I want to thank our partners in this effort, including the government of Sweden and the Aga Khan Development Network. Starting next year, civil society groups will be able to use these centers to network and access knowledge and technology and funding that they need to put their ideas into action.
At these Jubilee Games, we have over 25 countries represented, each with their unique culture and background. Appreciating the diversity in the community has enabled us to live as a prime example of plurality. It must be understood that the AKDN serves Ismailis as well as others, irrespective of faith, gender, ethnicity, and national origin. The Ismaili Imamate, as we know, has a responsibility to all of mankind.
Today, it embraces a group of agencies, non-governmental and non-dominational, operating in 35 countries. They work in fields ranging from education and medical care to job creation and energy production, from transport and tourism to media and technology, from the fine arts and cultural heritage to banking and microfinance. But they're all working together toward a single overarching objective: improving the quality of human life.
Here's my question. How many lives does AKDN touch globally? For example, did you know that AKDN generates electricity through several of its own power plants? How many people benefit from this? Any guesses? The AKDN generates electricity for 10 million people. That's 5 times the population of Dubai. And here are a few more impressive facts and figures. Take a look. AKFED, the Aga Khan Fund for Economic Development, is the agency of AKDN responsible for the third endeavor, which is economic development. AKFED operates more than 90 distinct project companies, employing over 47,000 people. In 2015, revenues reached 3.5 billion, but under its ethos, all profits are reinvested into further development projects. For example, the Bujagali hydropower project in Uganda, which provides a clean, reliable source of electricity to the country. Another great example is the establishment of Roshan Telecommunications in Afghanistan. Roshan means light or hope in Persian, and it's one of Afghanistan's leading providers of telecommunications. Today, Roshan serves 71% of the population and connects 6.5 million active users in 287 districts and cities across the country's 34 provinces. We're fortunate to have with us tonight the CEO of Roshan, Mr. Karim Khoja, who has over 25 years of experience in the telecommunications industry. Over the last 14 years, he's dedicated his time to AKFED in order to bring industry best practices to Afghanistan and Tajikistan. Please welcome Mr. Khoja.
Thank you. How are you?
Thank you for joining us this evening. Please. Mr. Khoja, we've heard so much success about Roshan through enabling its telecommunications. Now, through this, you've managed to revive trust in the region and create friendship and cooperation. Can you explain how Roshan has touched the lives of the people of Afghanistan?
So when I went to Afghanistan 15 years ago for 3 months as a volunteer, the mandate came from Hazrat Imam that there should be some sort of help to the government of Afghanistan. And the point that he made was that we should find a way of investing money in Afghanistan and creating best practice and show other investors that this was not a dangerous place and we could get a return on investment. And the opportunity came up to get a mobile license. We invested in, and you've given the statistics, but I think the whole idea of Roshan, even to the name and the color of the logo, was chosen by Hazrat Imam and the AKFED committee, and it symbolizes the vision of the imamate. So let me give you an example. The colors are red, sandstone red and lapis blue, which sandstone is the predominant color of Afghanistan sand, and the lapis blue is a famous stone that you find in Afghanistan. The name Roshan, as you said, is light and hope. And when we started the company, the idea was that if people can speak, they will not fight. And we quickly rolled out the network throughout the whole country. So we've invested over $750 million. And a story I'd like to tell you is when I was negotiating the license with the government of Afghanistan, I'd gone to business school, and at business school they taught me you get a moratorium, a period of time where you don't allow any competitors to come in. And I remember sending a note to the AKFED board saying, I've asked for a 5-year moratorium so no other competitor can come in. And then the message I got back was, no, you will not do that. You will shorten the time to only 2.5 years. And I was like, excuse me, this doesn't make sense. But if you look at 2.5 years into our success, when we bought the license, we paid $5 million. 2.5 years later, Etisalat, whom you all know from the UAE, and MTN from South Africa bid on that license and paid $40 million. Wow. And each of them then invested $2 billion each into Afghanistan. The Imam's vision wasn't about Roshan. It was about contributing and bringing investors into Afghanistan so the overall economic development of that country got better. So why did we do this? Today, we have telemedicine that we have connected, working with our sister agencies like the AKU and the French Medical Institute in Kabul, and we've connected 5 hospitals. A recent hospital we connected with was in Afghan Badakhshan. I'm going to give you some statistics. There's 1 doctor in 100,000 population in Badakhshan. It's one of the poorest areas. If you're lucky, you can get into that hospital in Badakhshan. And that doctor probably isn't has not gone to an accredited medical school like the AKU, even though the AKU is now starting to train doctors. When we opened that telemedicine link, Roshan and the AKU and FMIC and the Badakhshan Hospital, a little baby was born. Her name was Sidra. She had a huge, massive brain tumor. There was no way you could have transported that baby out of Badakhshan for her to live. Through the telemedicine link and specialists at the FMIC and specialists at the AKU, that primary qualified doctor was able to conduct the surgery on that baby, and that baby survived.
Through telemedicine, that's impressive.
So when Hazri Imam talks about our institutions working together or touching lives, I give that example when my board wants to cut my budget, you know. So that's one example. Another example, which I'm very proud of, is you talked about energy. We operate a power utility in Tajik Badakhshan in Khor called Pamir Energy. And when Roshan started, we donated money to bring a T-line from Tajik Badakhshan into Afghan Badakhshan. And I'm very proud to tell you today we also will be supplying the UCA. But what I'm very proud to tell you is that today now 6,000 households in Afghan Badakhshan get electricity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from Pamir Energy. And if you and these are mountain marginalized people. And if you think of development, if you can speak on a phone, that's great. But without electricity, you cannot even get people to learn because they don't have light. So those two fundamental necessities of life are available now to Afghans, even better than in Kabul or anywhere else. So, you know, I think I was a skeptic. I wasn't from the institutions when I went to Afghanistan, and I've been all around Afghanistan. And when you see the impact, when you feel the impact of what the Imam's vision has implemented, and you see the difference in those 6,000 households, average 10 people, and you see those kids having light, having a telephone, having access to education, having a health clinic, whereas before they wouldn't have had. That's quite incredible what it does to their lives.
That is incredible. So tell us, how do you engage the local communities in Afghanistan?
Actually, we have created over 34,000 indirect jobs. At Roshan, we've employed 20% of our staff are women. I'm very proud to tell you that one of the designate potential successors to the Roshan job is a young lady who was voted in Fortune magazine as one of the most powerful women, 100 women in the world last year. Shirin is actually an Ismaili, and that wasn't because she was an Ismaili. She's actually done it on merit.
Okay.
She started out with Focus Humanitarian Aid as a receptionist. We employed her at Roshan. She now has a master's from Manchester University, and basically she's an amazing businesswoman, and we hope that inshallah one day she'll take over.
Inshallah.
So by employing women, we've also created a role model in Afghanistan, creating jobs. I'll give you another example. When we started Roshan, there was a young guy who came in, he was Pushtun. He'd lived in the refugee camp in Peshawar, and he had tried to sell scratch cards at Mobilink in Pakistan. And when he came back, he said, I want to become a dealer, but he only had $4,000. And we said, sorry, but that doesn't work. You need more money. But he just begged, and he said, look, sir, I was in Pakistan. I used to sell scratch cards. My whole family put all their money together. Please let me sell scratch cards. So I said, okay. We said, look, you bring your $4,000, you buy your cards, you go and sell them, and you come back. So we then actually gave him a line of credit of another $4,000. He started his business, and I'd like to ask you and the audience, how many millions of dollars do you think he trades with Roshan today? Have a guess. You guess for them.
I'm blank. I'm sure it's quite a bit.
Throw out a number, somebody. 10 million. Okay, this young kid, 10 years ago, he was 19 years old when he started his scratch card business with $4,000. Today he's our largest dealer, and he trades off up to $60 million a year with us.
60 million, wow, that is fantastic.
So I think the important thing is that touching the lives, one other point I do want to make is also a Jamaat in Afghanistan. When we started Roshan, I want to say Wazir Shams Qasem Laka did probably one of the best jobs in the world in Fallout when the AKU was built. But I would like to challenge him a little and say at Roshan, if you look at the Ismaili Jamaat in Afghanistan when we started, they were the poorest of the poor. The Hazara community, which is most of our Jamaat, were really viewed in the hierarchy as being at the bottom of the pyramid. And since Roshan has started, if you come to Kabul, there's a vibrant Ismaili community through the scratch card business and other businesses related in construction and whatever. 40,000 Ismailis now are classed as middle class or upper middle class.
Amazing. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. As we end this evening, I hope that you've enjoyed the journey into how AKDN is touching lives. I've shared a lot of information with you, as have our interviewees, and hoping that you'll share these stories as well with your children, your parents, family, and friends. I also hope you've been able to feel the impact of the Aga Khan Development Network around the world. And more importantly, I hope that you've been able to reflect on why the Imamate has created such a massive network to help us all realize the social conscience of Islam. Simply put, it's all about touching lives. AKDN does not work in a vacuum. You and I are part of the AKDN, and we're all responsible in some way, shape, or form for enhancing quality of life, ours and others.
A passage from the Holy Quran that has been central to my life is addressed to the whole of humanity. It says, "O mankind, fear your Lord, who created you of a single soul, and from it created its mate, and from the pair of them scattered abroad many men and women." At the very heart of the Islamic faith is a conviction that we are all born, quote, of a single soul. We are spread abroad, to be sure, in all our diversity, but we share in the most profound sense a common humanity.
In conclusion, I ask each of you, what's your story? How can we connect to the stories of Fatiha, Roshni, and Zarina? How can we all play our role in improving the quality of life?
There are those who enter the world in such poverty that they are deprived of both the means and the motivation to improve their lot. Unless these unfortunates can be touched with the spark which ignites the spirit of individual enterprise and determination, they will only sink back into renewed apathy, degradation, and despair. It is for us, who are more fortunate, to provide that spark.